Thank you for tuning in to Koppen with Comic. I'm Brian Koppen, and we're here with comic Brian Lloyd. Brian Lloyd, how the hell are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Oh, good. Thank you so much for coming on and let people know where they can find you online. I know I follow you on Twitter, and I'm Brian Lloyd, and it sounds like you're that for Instagram as well.
Yeah, same thing on Twitter and Instagram at I'm Brian Lloyd. You can check out my website as well, thebrianlloyd.com. It's criminally out of date, but check
Yeah.
it at some point. You might get something new.
Yeah, it sounds like it is because you had sent me via Dropbox a sweet stand-up clip from the comic strip, and then you let me know that it was not on your website yet, and it's like, man, that shit's hilarious. Put it on Twitter at least.
Yeah, I really need to get it out there and start promoting my stand-up. I've mostly just been promoting stuff I edit and random little nonsense, but yeah, I'm way behind the times for a guy that's 23.
Yeah, for that, it's like the website is for people like me, the 40-year-olds, but for a 23-year-old, man, that shit should be just fucking everywhere, spliced into a TikTok and put on Instagram and all these fucking things.
Yeah, I need to do more dances, I think. I think that'll get me I think I'll blow up.
And yeah, also via the Dropbox was a short video that was still, you have to add a voiceover to it, but the short film was great. And so I wanted to talk to you about some of the, I don't know, similarities and differences of, between the stand-up and the film, and kind of, what, if you think of something funny, how do you know whether or not it's going to go on stage or in film, or is there a way to do it so it's both?
It's kind of just trial and error. I mean, there's some stuff that I'll think of that I know won't play on stage.
Okay.
And that's kind of the stuff that I've been thinking about a little lately without being able to go on stage. But it's definitely like, I'll take it to like a mic or a show, and I'll try and work in some new stuff. And I can feel that some stuff's funny when it doesn't hit. And usually, I'll go up with garbage, and I'll be like, oh, well, this is garbage. But if it's something I really like and it won't work after a few times, that's when I'll start to try and rework it into something that's maybe a little more visual.
Okay.
Like the thing that you mentioned, for example, it's a parody cologne commercial, basically. And it plays off of like the Matthew McConaughey style of celebrity center face with like a ridiculous voiceover, and like it has nothing to do with the product.
Lincoln car commercials.
Yes, exactly. So like that's something where it's like, yeah, I could try and talk about that on stage, but if no one's seen those commercials, they're not going to know what's going on. And that's a problem that I've had, like not with that specifically, but that is a problem I've had with, I'm a cinephile and like a huge movie person. So if I ever try and talk about like certain tropes or stuff that I just see over and over again, or like ridiculous things in movies, it's like not everyone has seen like this random, kung fu movie from like 78, but I can write that and shoot it, and then it's like, oh, at least you're seeing what I'm getting across even without the reference material in front of you. So it's kind of a trial and error type deal.
Yeah, you can give me some visual clues with the whole, you could call up the Matthew McConaughey commercials by shooting it the way you did, the kind of the low, the dramatic looking off into the distance and things like that. But then it takes an absurd turn, with that, because I didn't hear the voiceover, I had no fucking clue where that thing was going. And then, when you hit the absurd subway shot, for like, how the fuck did you film that? It was hilarious, but how did you film it?
So we filmed that over. Yeah, we actually had to film that 2 or 3 different nights. Because once I destroy my pants, it's So for anyone that, I mean, it's not out there yet, but when it is out there, it ends with my character pissing himself on the subway. So,
rushing water from beneath your butt. How did you even do that?
I had a piece of vinyl tubing running up my back, down into my pants with a water balloon behind me. and it actually didn't work as intended, and it worked out better. But the mouth of the balloon sort of fell off the end of the vinyl tube
Okay.
because we were just using dental floss to hold it on, so it was, not very sturdy, clearly. So it ended up just pooling down my back
Yes.
and just leaking out between both my legs. So it actually worked better. It had like this waterfall effect,
Yeah.
which is probably closer to what it would look like if you pissed yourself. But yeah, it was supposed to just be like a stream down the leg, and we shot that twice, and we just didn't have the camera movement to back it up. But we went over to the last stop in the 7 at 34th and Hudson Yards, and
Okay.
we were just bouncing back and forth between subways. So I live in Queens, so I take the 7 every day. So I know that by like 6 o'clock, like 6:30, there's not really anybody on it.
Okay.
And at that subway stop, there's just always at least 2 trains sitting there.
Okay.
So we're like picking up all our shit, running to the next one before it leaves, like trying to time it, trying to avoid MTA workers, trying to avoid people. The final shot that we went with, there was actually a family sitting at the other side of the car, and they were very confused.
Ah,
But yeah, it was
just
fun.
like every other McConaughey commercial. I mean, he pisses himself after the camera cuts.
Yeah, I think he's.
But dude, yeah, I love it. Like and things in your stand-up. I mean, are you thinking about turning that pacemaker bit into any sort of video?
Um, I mean, kind of. So I've been writing a web series for the last couple months, and it doesn't directly involve the pacemaker yet. But the character that I would play does end up going to the doctor because he gets a head injury. And I don't want to get too into how that plays out because it has
Right.
to do with some specific stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, it plays off the idea that my entire family goes to the same doctor because we all have the same issues.
Oh, okay.
So like even me, like, I'm not, I don't have high blood pressure yet, but like I will, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So there's a couple bits about my family that just for some reason never worked on stage that I thought were funny. And I kind of just worked into a scene with my doctor in my character's doctor, where they play off the idea that he has, all this familiarity. So, you know, um, fuck, and it does boil down to a dick joke at the end. That like, but yeah, I do like playing with the idea that like he has essentially a trial period. Like he has my grandpa and my dad to like sort of tinker with, and then he can get me right. Um,
I love that. And it's also funny because you're like,
yeah.
yeah, like you're like, oh well, you could also be diagnosed with something and be like, well, my dad doesn't have that, my grandpa doesn't have that, and the doctor's like, yeah, it's a new thing, and you're like, fuck, you know what I mean? Because isn't that the way? I mean, you're like, oh shit, because it's the same way in my family. My dad's got a shitty back, so now I'm like, yeah, my back hurts, and I'm probably gonna get it too. Or my mom has this, but I have no indication of that, so maybe that dodged a generation, and but then maybe I just fucking came up with new shit on my own.
Yeah, I'm worried that that's going to be balding for me. I
Yeah.
would, you'd think it would be more serious. Like cancer doesn't really happen in my family,
Okay.
but yeah, no balding. Like my dad's side doesn't really bald, but my mom's side does, and she was having some hair issues. So I'm like, damn. Like they say they say it comes from your mom's side, and if your mom's having some hair issues, then that's probably not a good sign. But then
Yeah.
maybe it skipped a generation. I don't know. I
Just
guess I'll find out.
get married young, and so they don't know about these issues. So they don't see the balding yet.
Yeah, maybe.
And so I guess this means that everything that you write can go somewhere. And so is it nice to know that, sitting down and going through a writing session, that, hey, this might go to Twitter, this might go to Instagram, this might go to stand up, and this might go to the video. I mean, you really have an incentive to just write all day long because there's no limiting factor. Because if something doesn't have enough context on stage, you can give it that context in a video.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say the hardest part has been, almost trying to figure out where to funnel my time into.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like, if I'm prepping for a shoot, like I might not do, I might go out of my way to not get up on stage for like a couple weeks so I can nail that shoot.
Really?
So it's always like this thing. Well, I like over obsess about prepping for certain stuff, like breaking down scripts and getting my shot lists in order and everything. So that's been my hardest thing, is just like balancing my own time and trying to figure out where I want to devote most of that time to, because it always feels guilty if I'm doing one or the other. Like they do all tie into each other, and it is nice.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things, like, if I dedicate more time here, will it do better? It's, I'm constantly playing tug of war with myself. I know part of me does think that helps whatever it is my process is, though. So I mean, I guess we'll find out in like 10 years if
yeah
if it worked or not.
And the quarantine has probably made certain decisions for you, like, so in the short term, at least, you're not going to have much of a choice. You're going to be like, oh, okay, well, I can, write jokes. I can, write, film treatments or whatever. I can shoot short videos of just myself talking to the camera. But at some point, you're just going to have to, go back out there and prioritize. And that's, do you like one more than the other? I mean, are you fine with being famous as a, director or a comic, or would you prefer one or the other?
I mean, I'd settle for being famous for anything.
Yeah.
Not anything, not like not like bad. Like, I don't want people to think I'm like not like a Nazi or something, but
not infamous, right?
Yeah, I mean, I ask myself that like every day, and it always kind of dictates what I work on like that day or the next couple days. Lately it's been easier. I haven't really been involved in any like, Zoom comedy or like Instagram like live stream stuff. Like, I just don't really dig that personally. So, I have been focusing a little bit more on stuff to shoot once, I can go back outside a little more freely without worrying about like, anything or people getting mad at me or whatever.
Yeah, because I think that can be, a nice thing in the near term, because the other one just seems a little dangerous to me, about going to like, going to fucking, being on a bar show with, 10 comics and 40 people in the audience. You're like, this is the worst case scenario. Like, everybody, all these people in close quarters laughing, outputting as far as droplets or whatever. Like, it seems the most dangerous fucking thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I kind of go back and forth on the severity of what's going on currently. I was super serious. Oh, actually, no. I started out being like not acknowledging it at all, and then like the weekend before we got locked down, I was at the gym and I was on my way home, and I was just like, I feel terrible, and then I didn't leave the house for a few days, and I think that might have just been in my head a little bit. And then I got super serious about it. And now I'm back to like, I don't know, like my like my tinfoil brain, like, just doesn't allow me to not see alternative possibilities. I'm not saying that like the government released the virus or anything. I'm not like that crazy.
Right.
But when we start talking about like months of people not being able to leave their house, it definitely gets my conspiracy brain churning.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that shit, yeah. It's like, I was reading all these articles about it, and they were always written by like an epidemiologist or some shit. Okay, the thing we should do is, everybody stays home, and then if somebody gets it, they admit that they have it, and they trace everybody you came into contact with. And I'm like, this is not going to happen ever in America, ever. And then you finally see all these articles being like, yeah, American is too libertarian and too free to want to do this bullshit. Like, nobody's ever going to download one of these contact tracing apps or whatever. It's just never going to fucking happen. And so I'm finally, I'm just happy to see that my skepticism about this, stay home forever, it's just, it didn't bear out in America. I just had a feeling it wouldn't, and it didn't. Like, people are fucking out there like crazy right now.
Yeah, it's just, like, all aspects of it are just wild. Like, it's just crazy, like, everything about it. And I made the mistake of watching like a couple zombie movies right when this started, So that definitely influenced my thinking for a few weeks, where it was like, not that I thought that it was like a zombie outbreak, but I was like, if anything happened like that, we would be cooked as a species. Like, absolutely.
Right.
Like, not even like like the protests and everything tying into it too is so wild, because like for weeks I was like telling my friends, I'm like, yo, watch, like there's gonna be a revolution, like we're gonna figure out the money's made up, and that like resources are like like for the most part completely, made up value,
Yeah.
and we're gonna, like, the people are gonna just revolt, and they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, like if you watch Train to Busan, which is a great Korean zombie movie, like you start to realize like, oh, this stuff is just gonna, like, there's no way to really contain anything if that happens. And
Yeah.
then once you, I'm diving too into like the fanfic in my mind for the alternate alternate reality of the world we live in.
Yeah.
So I'll cut it off a little bit there, because I can go on about this for hours, and I wish I couldn't, but
But
that's how
at
my brain.
so at some point though, your brain started turning around and realizing that maybe some of those things didn't come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like exciting, because it felt like, you know, I guess the last time that something like this would have felt similarly would have been like 9/11 maybe, but I was very
Yeah.
young when that happened.
Right.
Um, though my birthday party did get almost canceled, which was a bummer. My birthday's in September.
Okay.
But yeah, it was McDonald's birthday, which people don't do that anymore. And I went away to college with like a lot of rich white kids, and they're like, McDonald's birthday? Are you garbage? And I'm like, maybe, I don't know.
I didn't
where
think
where
I
I
was,
grew up, a
but
lot of people had McDonald's birthday parties.
uh,
But but yeah, it like it felt, everything about this just felt different. Like it felt like something was changing. I don't know if that's like being optimistic towards social change, or just acknowledging that like nothing that's happening right now is really precedented, because even in past pandemics or like health scares, we haven't had, the media coverage that we have now, and the
yeah.
political divide all happening at the same time. It's just wild stuff.
Yeah. And so, like, is any of this stuff gonna make its way into your act, either stand up or videos? Like, kind of just the
So
wackadoodle stuff that's going on right now?
yeah, I've been thinking about that, and I was consciously trying not to write, because I had a couple ideas and I was bouncing it off my writing partner. And we were just, after like one day, we're just like, everyone's gonna do this, right? And we're
Yeah.
like, yeah,
And
everyone.
they already
So
did it by now, It's
and
already out
right,
there on Twitter like
exactly,
crazy,
and
yeah.
and they already did it by now. So like that's one thing with the team of people I work with on my videos and my shorts is, for better or worse, we've tried to establish, we're a little bit less concerned about frequency in churning out content and quality. We think that there's a happy medium between, you know, shooting everything you can in one day on your iPhone and
Yeah.
taking months at a time to shoot with the best quality equipment. So
Right.
we're trying to find like a middle ground where, maybe we don't post as much, but we do have the best quality stuff that we can work with on our budget. Um, so we wouldn't get that timetable around for something to be too topical. So in terms of videos, I've tried to shift away from that. I have written a couple things that deal a little bit more in like just isolation and that type of stuff. So
Yeah.
less like, less hard hitting on like the specifics of what we're going on. And then in terms of stand up, when we can get back on stage, I mean, it'll be similarly like everyone's going to come out with their 5 minutes on the quarantine, but if I
Yeah.
can connect that back to specifically to like what my family's been doing, or something like that, then maybe I'll run with it. But
Yeah.
I don't want to just jump into the same well as everyone else.
Yeah.
That's just boring to me,
Yeah,
you
it's gonna
know.
come off as pretty hacky when ten of the comedians have the same fucking material.
Yeah, I remember when I first started stand up, I ended up at I went to a place because I thought there was a mic, and it turned out that there was a show. So I was like, all right, like I'll hang around for the show.
Right.
And it started out like pretty funny, and And then like by like the third or fourth guy in, I was like, oh, so everyone's doing the same joke about smoking weed and jerking off. All right,
Yeah,
cool.
don't
So
do that.
so that's been one of those things where it's like, add it to the list of what you, if you're going to talk about it, try and at least make it a little inventive or specific
Yeah.
to yourself.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting from your act, and people should always check you. I mean, you got to put that stand-up clip up so that people know that, your material, it comes from a, maybe an autobiographical place, but it's just original, and you take an original idea and you put it into just an absurd, kind of ends up in an absurd, hilarious place, kind of like, that video, of you fucking peeing yourself all over the subway. That was amazing. And they'll be able to track all this stuff at thebrianlloyd.com. And, at Twitter and Instagram, you're on Brian Lloyd.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Cool.
sir. And you know what? For you, I will start posting some clips.
Dude, well, I'm a follower, so I'll know if you don't. Thank you so much, Brian Lloyd.
Thank you for having me, man. It was a good time.